Well, hello, everyone. We are starting another interview here, and I have invited my friend Marcus Lloyd. I've known him for a few years. Marcus is the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Threaded. I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about it. But welcome, Marcus.
Hey, how are you doing, Kat? Good to
I'm
see you.
thankful that you could spend about 15 minutes and talk with us.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody about yourself
Yeah,
before we...
man, that's always a crazy question to
It
ask.
is.
What do people want to know? Who cares about any of these things, right? But, I am a pastor over at Wood Creek Church in Richardson. I get to be the outreach pastor there. I've been doing that for the past 6 years or so. I'm new, I'm becoming a native of this area. I've been in this spot for probably almost 20 years now, kind of in this area. I went to school at TCU, and so moved up from Houston, which is where I grew up. My parents still live down there. Moved up here, went to TCU, went to LA for a little bit because I was in the entertainment business for a long time, and then came back here and with my wife and my kids, and we live in the McKinney area now. So we've been hanging out here for a bit, have jumped to, got out of the entertainment world for a while, got into ministry, and I've worked at probably about 4 different churches in this area and a variety of ways, and ended up, like I said, at Wood Creek as their kind of outreach pastor, which we call the director of external focus. So I guess that's a little taste of me.
We cross over a little bit in that
Yeah,
as we minister with the poverty organizations and
right.
unite the church type calls and things, and so
Hmm.
food banks, things like that are playing over at warming stations. So we've crossed
Yeah,
over
yeah,
from a mission standpoint a lot.
yeah.
But the one place that we've really gotten to know each other well and to do some serious reconciliation type work with the churches and with the group is on the leadership group for the organization Threaded, and you
Yeah.
are the executive director there. And Marcus, uh, there's a lot of focus and a lot of attention right now around racial reconciliation. So why
Yeah,
don't you
that's right.
let me give you a few minutes to talk about Threaded, how it's different, and how that thought process came to you, and
Yeah.
why Threaded, things like that.
Yeah. I love talking about Threaded. It's been now about 6 years. We're coming up on 6 years where we first kind of started. And it all started with there was a pastor who was down the street from me at my last church. Who was at another church down the street who we had engaged in different things in the community before. And when the whole Michael Brown incident happened in Ferguson, he called me. He's a white guy. And he called me and said, "Man, I don't know what to think about this. I need to talk to you." So we met and had ribs in downtown Plano at Lockhart's Barbecue. And we just talked and we laughed and, we learned from one another, saw each other's perspectives, and left as even better friends. And so we decided to do it again and again. And then we started bringing some other people with us to have the conversation. And we moved to Port Richards in Plano, and then started kind of going through a book together, a book called Letters to the Birmingham Jail, which is a collection of essays by pastors and leaders writing letters back to Dr. Martin Luther King based on his letter from a Birmingham jail. We started going through that book and chapter by chapter, and people started to come, and then it stopped, and then we started again, and people started to come. And then in 2016, when the police shootings happened here in Dallas, where the police officers were shot during a Black Lives Matter rally, our group just kind of sat back and said, we've had such transformation in this conversation around race just from embarking in these conversations and studying together and building relationships with one another. We need to find a way to capitalize on this and create something around this, a group or an organization, so that we can help other people do the same thing, experience what we're experiencing. And so that's when Threaded was born. We came up with a name, vision, mission, values, all that stuff, and started engaging in the community and building these kind of groups, doing panel discussions, talking at different workshops and whatnot, and started just gathering other people to the work. And so we officially, we kind of built the team up and built a lot of sort of groundwork being done for it. And then about this time last year, we went official as a nonprofit 501c3. And so it's been a fun year, just kind of being that first official year as a nonprofit, and it's exciting to start it this way. I've done nonprofit work before, and I've started it where I started a nonprofit and then had to build sort of the backing for it. And this was fun because it was like by the time we got to last year, everybody's like, why are we not a nonprofit yet? We got
Yeah.
all the things in
Yeah.
place. We're doing events in the
Right.
community. We've got people know us. What's going on? And it was really just my fear, of just going, okay, this is gonna be a lot of work. We got to
God
keep going.
provides,
So
Marcus.
yeah, absolutely. And look, and that was part of it is I was fighting God and for several things last year, and he just kept punching me in the throat. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. And I haven't regretted any of the decisions I made last year around this arena. So this has been good. Yeah.
So why Threaded? Why the name Threaded?
Yeah, there's a couple years ago I had a opportunity to go to visit the Vatican in Italy, and my wife and I, as we were maneuvering through the Vatican, it's got all these different rooms there. They've got jewelry rooms and paintings and all these kind of things. And we turned the corner and found this hallway that was lined with some of the most beautifully intricate pictures that I'd ever seen, kind of hung up. And I, of course, thought they were paintings, right? Because they were so detailed, so colorful. But as I leaned in a little bit to look at this thing, I noticed something different. I noticed these small, colorful threads. And I realized that I wasn't in a painting room. I was in a tapestry room. I was looking at a tapestry. And I remember stepping back and looking at this beautiful piece of fabric woven together by thread and asking the question in my mind. The first question that came to my mind was, who created this, right? Like, who created this? And as I kind of thought about my own desire, my passion in my life, one of the things that I constantly want to see is that when people from the outside look at the church, that we will elicit the same response, right? That they will see us in all our tribes and tongues and nations and ethnic groups and genders and denominations and political backgrounds. And they'll be so overwhelmed by our beauty and our diversity and our unity that they will be compelled to ask the question, who is the God that threaded these people together? And so we just have this vision of this tapestry, which really the image that's displayed on this tapestry of threads woven together is the image of God. And so that's why threaded, because we all play a part and we all are a thread in emulating and mirroring the image of God to the world.
I got to tell you, every time I hear the story, my heart just goes bursting. I just love that story. I love that story. And I'll also say, just over the years I've watched, and it really is a beautiful tapestry. So much as nowadays is appropriately focused on Black and Black Lives Matter, and we've talked a lot about that. But there is this wonderful weaving of all races, all Black, brown, light brown, dark brown,
red, yellow, black, and white,
exactly,
right? They're
exactly. So there are individuals, there are Middle Eastern, there are Asian, there are just from all over involved in this group. And so hearing from all kinds of perspectives is wonderful.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that Threaded does? Like, what are some of the events? What's the primary focus that you try to help bring this tapestry about?
Yeah, look, our mission is to inspire relationships, reconciliation, and collaborative action among the diverse body of Christ. And so we try to create things that create some of those opportunities. So building relationships with one another, we want to create really safe and transformational environments where people from different cultural backgrounds can come together, they can have this conversation, and they can experience some of the values of Threaded, right? That it'll be a kingdom-oriented conversation, which we will be centering around this idea of the gospel. We talk about this idea that when we get together, it's a family conversation in which our primary identity is our identity in Christ, and then we have these platforms, these secondary or even tertiary identities that kind of play out. But we're able to reset to this united thing that we have. And so we want to create spaces where we can reset to the gospel, but talk about issues really authentically and in ways that are confessional. None of us has this all figured out. So we want to create a space where people can confess and say, look, I don't know this, or this is the thing that I think, and this is what I've experienced, or this is my thought that I'm afraid to tell anybody. And in the midst of that they will experience another value of ours, which is grace, grace given, because we all know that we all make mistakes. And so in this conversation, we're going to make mistakes. And so we want to make it confessional, but we also want to be able to have a place where people can experience grace. And so we create those environments that allow for that to happen. And in the midst of that happening, what we believe and what we've seen is that when people get into proximity of one another, whether it's the suffering or the culture of one another, and they experience confession. They offer confession, experience forgiveness and grace. That all of a sudden there's this transformation that happens in that these people that are the theys and the us's and the theys, whatever, or the you and the theys, or the we, whatever, yous, the other, everything kind of comes together to form this new sort of collective identity. It's much like what happened with Ruth and Naomi, you know what I mean, as they connected as a family in the Old Testament, right? And all of a sudden, Naomi's sons die, and so she's sending off Ruth and her sister-in-law, you know, to go back to their countries to be a part. And Ruth turns to Naomi and said, "Where am I going to go? Like, your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you go, I'll go." They had gotten so deeply connected that they created a new collective identity, right? And so we want to, as we see these relationships come together, people engaging in relationship, they form this new collective identity. And then what they start doing is they start working to help the other. So if somebody in your new collective identity is experiencing some type of injustice, then as a value of ours, we talk about being courageously contending for others, right? So if somebody's messing with my son, right, I'm going to be like contending for him to not experience this injustice. So any member of my family, I'm going to do the same thing. So Kathy, you're a member of my family. You're part of the collective identity. So if somebody's messing with you, they're messing with me. Right. So now your people and my people, I'm going to compassionately contend for you so that you don't have to experience injustice. I'm going to use whatever time, talents, and treasures or privilege I have to make sure that doesn't happen. And so again, we've created these spaces where these relationships get created and where reconciliation happens, or reconciliation creates a new collective identity. And then we start to now, and this is one of the places we're really growing at, is creating these spaces where now these folks have corrected this identity, where they can come together and they can start planning and thinking of ways and of how to counter the activities of injustice that maybe we're seeing in our community. And so we've seen that in ways in which churches and individuals, but specifically churches, have come together to do work in the community. We've created partnerships around multi-churches with multi-ethnic homogeneities, around school partnership. We had a partnership that was really striving and growing in Rwanda, where we were actually learning about reconciliation ministries there, and then providing some services that they needed from us. And even in, health and wellness, and it kind of, the list goes on and on. We've just kind of been getting churches around that. We're still in the, some of the early stages where churches are still learning how to work with one another across these cultures. And so there's a lot of trial and error and some failures and successes, but it's been fun. So we create those events. We do a big event every year to kind of launch us at the beginning of the year, called Community, which is a time where the churches come together and worship and pray and just be reminded of the tapestry, vision, with the kind of the impetus is to push out through the year and find ways to do things together that are collaborative. And so do that, panel discussions. We have a podcast. We're doing, church consulting right now. Churches are more than ever wanting to figure out how do we get into this discussion? How do we get better at this? And so they're coming to us, and we have a kind of a 4-step process that takes a little time, but something very helpful. So yeah, we find ourselves maneuvering a lot of stuff now, definitely in the midst.
You really are. Yeah. There's a lot out there. You're right. There's this process that's sprouting, and that's spirit led, but very, very productive, I think, and transformational, like you said.
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's part of what I think is, I hope, again, when you create your organization, you want to go, okay, what can we do that nobody else can do, right? And sometimes you hit that and sometimes you don't. But as I'm watching other organizations kind of do the work, they're doing some really good work, and they're doing things that we don't do very well, But one of the things I think we pride ourselves on is really trying to stay gospel focused, right? Like centering everything around the gospel. And we want it to be more than just a black and white conversation. We want to bring in lots of different ethnicities. We understand that, again, the tapestry has a lot of different colors, and there's a lot of different injustice, honestly, in this country that have been experienced and perpetrated. And so we want to be able to bring those things to light and deal with those, and the injustice that is happening even today that's beyond just black and white injustice. And so we want to give a place for that. And but again, the place that I think as we looked out, and it's been the hardest, is that we're trying to keep Jesus in the center of this thing. Keep the scriptures in the center of this thing. And sometimes that's, I don't see that all the time. And I think that's the only place that's going to really help us to find, it's the only place that you can, the church is in one way is the only place that you can find a primary identity that does actually bring together all tribes, tongues, and nations, right? It's actually the vision that God gives us in Revelation 7:9 that we're going to experience in the throne room of God is all tribes, tongues, and ethnic groups.
Right.
So if we just follow after the gospel and be intentional about that, then we know that God is for us and behind us to make that happen. So we lean in on that, and we think that separates us a little bit.
So, one of the things that's really blossomed and grown over the last year is your partnership with Antoine and the Colored Commentary podcast.
Yeah.
So you want to share some of the social media type stuff and the podcast type stuff?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
here's what I loved about the podcast is that if I were, that I'm not necessarily shy about joining in conversations, but if I were reluctant to join into conversations, what's it's all about? That podcast is one that's very good about how we talk about things, how we aren't afraid to bring up the difficult topics, how we're putting those front and center and trying to work through those. So I thought this might be a good time for you to talk about Colored Commentary.
Yeah. I enjoy it. Again, it's a space that we talk about. We're trying to learn in public in some ways. I mean, nobody knows it all, but Antoine and I have been friends for close to, I guess, almost 15 years, and found that we think alike and differently at the same times, right? So we both like to kind of dig in and try to talk about issues and take the devil's advocate approach and kind of think about it from the other side. He's kind of the mental guy. I'm kind of the heart guy, right? So I come in with a lot of passion. He comes in with a lot of kind of like logical twists. And so it becomes a great partnership. And we call it Color Commentary because it's this idea of, we move through life. It's obviously a provocative title that's supposed to get people to kind of click it, right? But it's this idea of we all come into life with a single lens in many ways, particularly in the conversation of race. But for our understanding to really be full, we're going to have to color our lenses. They're going to have to be more colored. And so that's going to be listening to people who maybe have different lenses. So we kind of talk about Color Commentary as colorful conversations by colorful people about Christianity, culture, and race. And so, like you said, I think it really is helpful for those who are wanting to be gospel change agents, but don't know necessarily all the ways in which to do that. They don't know all the terminology. They don't know all the pitfalls. And when they get into the conversation, what should they expect? And so we try to bring some of that out and really kind of resource people and just end the conversation. So, we want to give them, again, a fuller picture of it, and then also a gospel narrative that goes along with it. So it's been a lot of fun. We've been doing it for over a year. We've got like 38 episodes and several just kind of actually waiting to be released that we just haven't had time. And then even this last month, during the first part of this, the George Floyd situation, we did 21 days of prayer and lament as a threaded. We had 21 days of just lamenting over some things from history that we needed to lament and pray that God would forgive us and show us how we can do better. We had devotionals from pastors from all over the country that kind of were able to ground it in scripture. We had a justice letter that could be sent to your congressman about police reform that was drafted by one of our team members who's a lawyer and attorney. And then we had Colored Commentary Unplugged, which every weekday we did, where we just kind of opened up a Facebook Live and people could write in questions and we just dealt with that. And so we love doing that. Love having the conversation. And like you said, it's people who aren't in the conversation, they can peek in a little bit and nobody knows they're there. Exactly. And they can listen, they can disagree, agree, but they can hear and learn without anybody knowing about it. So
yeah. And they can just hear what it's all about. And the thing I liked about the 21 days, I liked it all, but the one thing was that was helpful to me was the Equal Justice Initiative calendar. That every day there was an event that was marked that we would read through what happened. We always hear the really more commonly spoke of the March in Selma or something like that, or the bombing in Baptist Church or. But,
16th Street Baptist.
Yeah, but it's just there's just so many that we are not necessarily understanding that it really does happen more often and did happen more often and continues to happen. So, so one last thing, if Arapaho wanted to get involved, if someone wanted to get involved, so Colored Commentary for sure, right? If they were a Twitter person, what would they look for?
Yeah, they're looking for, particularly for Colored Commentary, we do Colored Comments, COMMENTS. And that's a place where we tell people if they want to throw their questions and whatnot, they can do it. You know, if they, we've got an Instagram for Threaded. We are underscore Threaded. Even our Twitter, which we don't play as much on the Threaded because Antoine and I kind of do more of the colored comments, but that's
Right.
we are underscore Threaded as well for Twitter. Then when you go on Facebook, it's We Are Threaded, and that's where we've had a lot of activity and where we'll concentrate a lot of stuff in the next couple of months because it's easy, accessible, and we can share it to other aspects as well. But yeah, and then we got wearethreaded.org, which is just our website, coloredcommentary.com, which is our website as well. But you can access that from We Are Threaded as well. So yeah, they can find different ways to put their names down. So if they want to be a part of a group, we're trying to create groups as well. And we also have our own, small group curriculum. So if anybody's wanting to do a group, facilitate their own group, they can just download it from our, wearethreaded.org/groups. They can download the deal. There's facilitation training there where they can get a full facilitation training. And there's a video that I do for each week to help facilitators as they go forward, what they need to be thinking about. So trying to make it pretty easy for folks. And if people want resources, right, if they're trying to figure out, okay, what should I read about this and that, we've got a resource page that they can find that has anything from, historical things that they can read that are, Christian in nature. There's some secular things we think are helpful. There's activities people can do and learn, other internet sites that they can go to. I even have a video on how do you talk to your kids about race that's on that particular deal. So there's lots of resources there as well.
There's lots of good stuff that, as we start to move out of our comfort zone, I say we, speaking as a white woman, as you start to move out of your comfort zone and expand the color that you see and that you're involved with and in relationship with, it helps you to be more comfortable in those settings, to be able to see some of that and to listen and then actually join in the conversation and see what God intended for all of us.
And look, so, that's kind of the push for us, right? Like we think about it as, if you know anything about Star Wars, right? You've got Luke who's trying to be this Jedi, right? This is the old Star Wars. Like this is my generation, Star Wars. Luke,
right?
You're trying to, he's trying to be a Jedi. He wants to learn about how to do that, but he needs help to be able to be an effective Jedi. So you've got, the Obi-Wans and the Yodas that come alongside him to say, hey, I'm going to help you be the best Jedi you can be. And that's where Threaded is. Like, it's not about us and you guys doing the things for us. It's like, no, we're trying to resource you. We're trying to resource those who are trying to be change agents, want to make a difference in this conversation. We want to resource them so that they can go out there and multiply out beyond us. So
that's so great. I'm so thankful that you took the time to talk with us, and I'm sure that you'll be getting some calls. At least someone within Threaded will be getting some calls about small groups and facilitating and things. Thank you, Marcus. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kathy, thanks for having me. It's a blessing to be able to do it.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.